It's the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast as we look back on Week 6 and start to look ahead to Week 7 in the NFL. Throw some baseball in as we head to the later parts here of October. Remember, as always, brought to you by the good folks at Bet Rivers. Go to betrivers.com. Download the Bet Rivers app, which will allow you faster experience, exclusive promotions, one app while traveling. And remember, get extra value this football season with the Bet Rivers Squares. You have a chance to win up to $10,000 in bonus money. All you have to do is wager $10 in same-game parlays on any of the games with the square icon that is featured. And who knows, maybe you'll win $10,000, get some extra action, and away you go. So check out the ever-improving Bet Rivers app. Now, we put the finishing touches on Week 6 last night with a flag-plagued, mistake-plagued 2017 Cowboy win over the Chargers. I mean, way too many penalties, way too many mistakes. A game where you figured there would be more offense. They did both make goal line stands. Dallas allowed the Chargers back in the game by muffing a punt, and they then got the ball back down the field and kicked the winning field goal. Chargers should be better than they are. Continue to be puzzling. Not puzzling, they're not well coached. They make way too many mistakes, critical mistakes at terrible times. And I thought of this. If there's ever two figures in the NFL that need each other, it would be Herbert and Belichick. Could you imagine if you plopped Herbert on Belichick's doorstep? You would have 5 more years of really superb winning football, because that's what he needs. He needs a raw, terrific, untapped quarterback talent. He can't get that. He can't find that. Yes, he has to sprinkle in some other offensive players, but he can do that. Sometimes it's painful, but he can do that. But talk about when a quarterback needs a coach and a coach needs a quarterback. Never has there been two who are kind of wandering in the wilderness right now. Belichick losing big in New England. Herbert's just whiling away the years with the Chargers and getting nowhere, and nowhere fast. Week 6 will be remembered for a truckload of big injuries. And as you go forward into this week, there are a lot of teams off, including the Jets are off this week, the Cowboys are off this week, the Bengals are off this week. But as you look at and monitor what's going to happen in Week 7, where there are a couple of interesting games, two that stand out in particular, two that just kind of jump out, as a matter of fact, but which I'll get to. But have to go back and monitor these injuries and see where people are. Lawrence is hurt going into the Thursday night game. McCaffrey's hurt. Samuels is hurt for the Niners. They play the Monday night game. Garoppolo. Montgomery for the Lions. He'll be out a while. Fields, he'll be out a while. Tannehill, high ankle sprain, he'll be out a while. Tremendous amount of injuries in Week 6 going forward. Some are going to be out a while. Some game time decisions, they say Lawrence is day-to-day, but they have a Thursday nighter. So will he be ready for the Thursday nighter? Hard to say yet if he will be or won't be, okay, as we go forward here. They have the Saints, the 4-2 Jaguars, very much in the thick of things. Saints at 3-3, so that's the Thursday night game, and they travel, so it's a short week for them. And remember, never discount the fact that the home team has a significant advantage in those Thursday night games, and so almost an unfair advantage. The road team having to travel, gets very little practice time, gets very little to do, very little time. I mean, they're on the clock from the minute the Sunday game ends. And we'll see what happens with Lawrence going into the Thursday night game. The two games that you look to feature in week number 7, the Dolphins and the Eagles on Sunday night, a battle of 5-1s. The Dolphin offense has been by far, in this time when quarterbacks are struggling, in this time when teams are struggling to score points, the Dolphins have been just a juggernaut. Now, they don't have Ashawn, unfortunately. He is going to be out probably for a month, but they have so many weapons. And now the Eagles, depleted in the secondary, will have a hard time dealing with that. But they will have a lot of trouble with the Eagle running game. They will have a lot of trouble with a lot of the physicality of the Eagles. And the Eagles have got to, and this falls to the head coach, he has got to bridge that gap in the passing game that is seriously lacking. Hurts has terribly missed his offensive coordinator, who now resides in Indianapolis. He has terribly missed him. And it continues to show up with his poor play. I mean, let's be honest. I put that loss on the head coach because I don't think that ball ever should have been thrown on third down. I don't think they should have thrown on third down. I think they should have kicked the ball back, used the time, get the clock down to about 1:20, kick the ball back, and let them play defense. Taking the running game out of the Jets at that point, Jets would have no timeouts. You're maybe allow them one running play, so they can't use Hall the way they want. And with the quarterback still trying to find himself, and with that pass rush and the Jets' exposed offensive line, I mean, it's a good matchup. I don't think they would have gotten down there and been able to win the game. I was surprised, and he threw the ball to a tight end who was completely bracketed on both sides. The other game is the Lions and the Ravens. The Ravens are good. They're sneaky good, and they're getting healthier. The Lions are solidifying on defense. They have a very easy schedule. They're 5-1. Now they are down backs. Gibbs has been banged up. Montgomery's out. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Now they do have a very efficient passing attack. So that'll be a very good game. Lions at Ravens. Dolphins at Eagles. Those are two very, very good games. The Monday nighter is San Francisco at Minnesota. Not terrible, but not very, depending. We got to see who's in that game. We know Jefferson's out, but we don't know about McCaffrey. We don't know about Samuels. We don't know about even Trent Williams. We're not sure about going this early part of the week. Those are the featured games. Locally, Jets are off. They get the Giants next week. Giants get the Commanders this week in a game they need desperately to win. Desperately. Because, they can't continue to let these losses just pile up and pile up and pile up as they are. And they are piling up. What do you take out of the Monday night win for all you Cowboy fans right now? Okay? Where does that leave them? Did they salvage enough coming off the brutal beating they took at the hands of the 49ers? They have a bye this week. So they go into that bye at 4-2. They come out and they host the Rams. The week after. Then they have a very big matchup, the first of two, with the Eagles. So that's right ahead for them off the bye. So the bye, they will be looking at everything as teams do during the bye, self-examining every part of the team, really taking apart why they're so bad in the red zone. Last year, they were 71% scoring touchdowns in the red zone. This year, they're 36% scoring touchdowns in the red zone. It has hampered them. And let's be honest, the big play in the game for them was a broken play. It was a play that first, Pollard was in for protection. He leaked out, caught a pass, broke a tackle, and then went 60 yards down the field for their biggest play of the year. That really got them ignited on offense after they had stalled time again by penalty. They couldn't run the ball. Neither team could run the ball last night. The Cowboys have a very solid defense. There's no question about that. But they are missing a bunch of things on offense. Maybe they located one last night in that Brandon Cooks finally stood up as the second receiver. He tried to force feed Gallup. They were off target and off sync, out of sync all night. Then he went to Cooks for some big plays. He went to Cooks for a touchdown. Cooks is a very speedy professional receiver. He should be utilized more opposite Lamb. He's the guy that should step up and be the number 2 receiver. And they have to do a better job in their running game, which has been not very good. Not Pollard's fault. They're not opening any holes. Really not. You know, Pollard is a superb player. If you give him space, he will make a play. If you give him a seam, if you give him an opening, he will make a play. He's an explosive player, as you saw on that 60-yard play. He had 80 yards in receiving last night, but had about 30 yards rushing for the game. But Pollard can be, you know, is a very good player. I have a lot of respect for Pollard. It's not his fault, but they are not opening any holes in their run blocking, and their red zone stuff is really bad. But the Eagles aren't without their issues, too, and they're very banged up. And I look for the Eagles, who are usually very deft traders. I look for them to make a move in that secondary to solidify it. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a couple of trades before the trading deadline, because they have a chance to go back to the Super Bowl, and they need to solidify a couple of things on this team, especially the secondary with all the injuries they've had. Jets can revel and pat themselves on the back, which they are very wont to do, and their coach is very wont to do. I still can't believe his comment about embarrassing the elite quarterbacks. That's going to come back to haunt him. It's going to come back to haunt him in Buffalo. It's going to come back to haunt him down the road. It's just a comment you don't make. You know, like I said, could you imagine this guy when he wins? This guy has a terrible record for his career as a head coach. And all he's done is got back to 500 this year. And he talks and talks and talks. But you know what? Some coaches are like that. You know, they back it up, but they don't. And sometimes they talk themselves silly, right out of a job, and right into the next, part of their football careers, because it just puzzles you why you would go out of your way to. You don't need that. You don't need that. And the coaches that win big, they never do that. Never. They always build up the opposition. Always. And then kick the heck out of it. I mean, Bear Bryant lived that way. You would have thought his team had no chance every week, and then they go in there and win 50-0. That's the way to do it. You don't try to embarrass the opponents and belittle the opponents, especially when you've accomplished nothing. But, hey, to each their own. That's the way it is. A little baseball before I get to your emails. Texas is an absolute machine. I mean, an absolute machine. Whatever they need to do in the game, they do. They need a hit, they get it. They need a big out, they get it. Evaldi has to get out of a bases loaded jam with nobody out. What does he do? He gets all 3 outs, including a strikeout of Altuve with the bases loaded and 1 out. And Tucker is in a huge slump. And Altuve has gone into a huge funk. And they are going to have a hard time overcoming that. Now, what you do is pitch around Alvarez, who already has 6 postseason home runs. I mean, he's unbelievable. But, hey, right now in that lineup, you pitch around him, as they did last night late in the game. Pitch around him. They have yet to lose in the postseason. They go to Texas now with a chance to put this away. They have Houston reeling, down 2 games, and they are now halfway to the World Series in what has become a dynamic postseason run in every way. Getting it from a lot of different places. And that's the sign, that's the sign of a good team. That's what a good team does. A good team gets it in the postseason from everywhere. They don't just rely on one guy. All right. It's nice when, guys are knocking the ball out of the park like Harper and a couple of the other Phillies are. All right. But it's better when your whole squad, everybody has a role, everybody has a part, everybody fills in, and Texas just continues to just really be stupendous in every way. They really are. It's amazing what they've accomplished. It really is. I mean, they've been just unbelievable. And you have to be ultra impressed with everything they've done. The Phillies continue their winning ways against Arizona. Get the lead last night, jump out with the quick home runs from Schwarber, from Harper. They continue to just play very solid baseball. And it's going to be, listen, you knew the Phillies were going to be tough in this series. They are going to be tough in this series. Arizona's had a great run already just to make the playoffs and then have some success in the playoffs. Nobody's kissing them off after one game, but, hey, it's going to be a tall order. And the Phillies drew first blood last night with a 5-3 win. Game 2 tonight, as Aaron Nola will try and move the Phillies to a 2-0 start. He's been very good in the postseason, just as Wheeler, watching what Wheeler did. And, Wheeler's a guy you have heard me talk about. He was one of the best kids I ever met with the Mets. I mean, he was great. I've said this, if you've listened to me, you've heard this before, but when I used to take the kids when they were little, both my boys, and I'm talking about when they were, 7 and 5, 8 and 6, ages like that, 8 and 7, whatever it was. I would take them, and he'd grab them and take them out on the field. He'd have a catch with them. He'd take them in the outfield. I mean, he was great with them. I didn't ask him to do it. He just did it. I mean, he asked if he could do it. He loved it. He just liked being around the kids. Who was that way too? It was Jabba Chamberlain was that way. I mean, he loved the kids. And he was such a high-class kid. Yeah, he was quiet. But what a mistake letting him go. And what a pitcher he's become for the Phillies. And what a good, dynamic postseason pitcher he's become. He really has. He's just become an outstanding postseason pitcher. And, you got to give him credit. He continues to just get the job done, as does Montgomery, which is kind of, hard for Yankee fans to watch, I know. But, hey, it's the way it is. Montgomery's done a great job. Wheeler continues to be an ace, a dominant pitcher, the kind of guy you hope that you can, get your hands on. You hope you find a Wheeler. You really do. Who can come out and, give you 6 great innings, which is all anybody wants anymore. That's the bottom line. That's all they want. They want you to go 6 innings and turn it over to the bullpen and see where it goes there. And really, usually in the first 5 innings of these games is virtually unhittable. He usually strikes out half a dozen or more, and then, 6th inning, turns it over, and away you go. I mean, he's done just an incredible job in the postseason. And he and Nola have been a terrific 1-2 punch. And, that's how you wind up getting guys like that give you what they've done. This year in the postseason, he's 2-0 with 19 innings pitched and 26 strikeouts with a 0.63 whip. He's done a great job. He really has. And the Phillies continue to get power. They get, obviously, from Harper. They get it from Castellano. They get it from Schwarber. And, hey, home runs, power pitching. That's how you win games. That's how you win series. That's how you wind up in the World Series. And right now, Texas and Philly have a leg up. Texas is just a juggernaut. There's no way around it. And Houston, they look, I got to be honest, they look tired. Except for Mr. Alvarez, who's, the best player in the playoffs. They look tired. They look like been here, done that, and we're about wrung out. But I'm very surprised. I have to admit, very surprised by Tucker. I like Tucker, and I'm very surprised he has gone into this kind of nosedive, and he has gone into a colossal nosedive in this postseason, and now Altuve has joined him. They even moved him into the 3-hole last night in front of Alvarez. This postseason, he has just been absolutely, absolutely awful. He's hitting 091 with 1 RBI. I mean, this is a kid who had been very good in the postseason. Before that, he had 8 home runs in the postseason. And obviously, in the regular season this year, he hit 29 homers and knocked in 112 runs. He's a legitimate slugger, and he has just been absolutely awful. And same thing, Altuve has hit his skids too, especially in this series. So they're getting Altuve out, they're getting Tucker out. They can't get Alvarez out, but nobody else can either. So they'll take the pitching around him and ask and see if somebody else can beat him. Abreu is dangerous, there's no question. But other than that, they haven't gotten a whole lot, and we'll see where it takes them. I mean, listen, they got some guys in that lineup. Brantley has hit. Bregman can hit. That Abreu can hit. But they need Altuve. He's kind of the spark plug. And I think they need Tucker, too. I really do, for things to go right. And they got to pitch a lot better. So it's not just one category for Houston right now, as they find themselves very much in trouble in this series. All right, emails when we come back.
You're listening to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
Mike Francesa podcast at gmail.com. That's how you do it. Send your emails. I know we're backed up on a lot of emails, so we'll get through some here. Ben, are you worried about the Bills? I like Josh Allen, but it seems like they struggle to get the job done sometimes. Yeah, they're very erratic. When they win, when they're off and running, when they get off flying in the game, it usually means about a 15 to 20-point win. And when they struggle. And it's very true of Allen. He has had those very wild inconsistencies in his game in the last 2 years. A lot of people thought he missed Dable. Maybe he did. Maybe he's just getting past that. I think the Bills are very dangerous. But I would say right now, at this juncture, as the smoke clears, and I picked a Cincinnati-Philadelphia Super Bowl. Cincinnati is starting to come out of it. Their defense stepped up. Their offensive line didn't look good the last game. Their defense stepped up. Burrow and Chase, they're back to 500. The Bills are 4-2. But to me, the most complete team is still Kansas City. And you have Mahomes, and you have Andy, and you have Kelsey. And they still need to identify who's going to be that wide receiver they can count on to run the right route, to make the big catch. I think it's going to be Rice. More than say Tony, more than say Moore. I think it's going to be Rice. But their defense has a chance to be the best it's been since this whole run has started. Dan, refs obviously play a huge role in sports. Well, obviously. With football, it seems like they have too much control. Fans now wait to see if there's a flag before celebrating a big play. There's a controversial play in every game. Hey, first, the obvious. The NFL is a very hard sport to officiate. Very hard. With that said, yeah, there's been a lot of lousy officiating. The problem is you have a couple of plays here and now, like roughing the passer, which comes down sometimes to just awful calls. They lean towards protecting the quarterback. And why? Well, you've seen 8 quarterbacks get hurt in the last 2 weeks. This league stinks when they don't have starting quarterbacks. That's why. if you have a product late in the season and you got 11 starting quarterbacks out, this league is awful with backup quarterbacks. The product stinks. You wind up turning the games off when you have backup quarterbacks in the game, most of the time. There are exceptions. There's some pros at backup, like Tyrod Taylor's not. He's almost a starter. He's not really a backup. But yes, the officiating is frustrating. But I think it is. I think it is. It's just a very difficult game to officiate. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of players on the field. And you just got to live with it. It's a necessary evil. Tariq, would it be wrong to bench Wilson for Rodgers if he leads the Jets to the playoffs? Okay, so here's Tariq's scenario. The Jets make the playoffs with Wilson at quarterback, and then Rodgers is healthy. Hey, Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks, one of the greatest quarterbacks who has ever stepped on a football field. That is not a knock on any other quarterback. It's an easy switch. You're talking about an immortal player. So it's not hard at all, Tariq. It would be very easy at any point. It would be very easy. Scott, when he was drafted, many of us thought Evan Neal was a safe pick. Why do you think he struggled so much? First of all, you never know. The move from high school to college is a dramatic one. Ara Parsigan used to always tell me, the great Notre Dame head coach, he said, I would bring in 30 recruits a year. And he said, it never failed. The guys who were at the bottom of the list, the last couple of scholarships we gave, some of them fringe guys, some of them would become my All-Americas. And some of my guys out of high school I would have thought would have been All-Americas never made it. He said usually like a third would be normal, a third would disappoint, and a third would overachieve. And he said sometimes the guy I gave the last scholarship to became my best player for the next 4 years. You don't know who is going to have the makeup, the maturity, the development to raise their game. Same thing with the pros. You do it all over again. And it's the same thing. There are as many good players and great players drafted in the third round as there are drafted in the first round. That's a fact. There are surprising, legendary players who were free agents, John Unitas. Late round picks, Tom Brady, and on and on and on. So it's not an exact science. You take a player, but he still has to develop mentally, physically. He has to lift his game. He has to be better. And a lot of people fail. And it's just the way it is. Now, are there no-brainers? Of course there's no-brainers. Are there huge surprises like Tom Brady? Yes. I think Neal's future, you asked me, do you think he has a chance to develop? I think he'll be a guard. I think he will probably make it as a guard. He's not going to make it as a tackle. Richard, is the Pats dynasty the greatest of any team in any sport? Not even close. It's a great run. But they lost some heartbreaking games, and they lost 2 heartbreaking championship games to the Super Bowls to the Giants. They got a couple of breaks, or they could have lost a couple more games. They should have lost Atlanta. They should have lost Seattle. It's a great run, but no, it's not the greatest. It's not the greatest football run of all time, and it's not nearly close to what has happened in other sports. Cody, Bryce Harper's doing wonderful things for the Phillies. Do you think it was a mistake that the Yankees didn't get him? Yes. Now, was I overwhelmingly for Harper? I was not. Would I have taken him? Yes. I was worried about him being very injury prone. I also wondered about him in New York a little bit, I have to admit. He was a little odd in his personality. He had been coddled from a very young age. I worried about him in New York a little bit, and I worried about him being very injury prone. But I am an advocate, an overwhelming advocate for left-handed Yankee power. Always have been, always will be. I wanted Olsen in the worst way. I wanted Schwarber in the worst way. And yes, I would have easily taken Harper because he's left-handed and because he's very talented. James, have NFL coaches forgotten fundamentals? In a 9 game, Shanahan got the ball back with 3:24 left and passed 3 times. Listen, that's not a good example. Remember, he had key people out of the game, including McCaffrey. They were not running the ball at all on the very good Cleveland defense. So I think that's a very bad example. Listen, is clock management, is good game management, good clock management, and good play calling rare? Yes, yes, and yes. Very rare. You see these coaches make mistakes in clock management all the time, in game management all the time. We saw it with the Jets in the first half 2 weeks ago. We saw it with the Giants in the first half this past week. I don't care if that's miscommunication. I don't care what you want to call it. It's terrible. Absolutely cannot happen. Cannot happen. And if you're Saleh, you cannot be asking your field goal kicker in the game, in a big spot, thumbs up, thumbs down from the distance in question. I think it was 57 yards here. Thumbs up, thumbs down. What you should have done, and it has always been the way it's done, is before the game, the kicker goes out there and then gives you a distance that he can make it, the max distance from both sides. I can make it from here this way. I can make it from here this way. Give me the numbers. Give me the numbers. That's what head coaches do. Instead of sitting around before the game thinking of things to say. That's what they do, not go to them when they're in the game and go thumbs up, thumbs down. You know the number before the game starts. Now, should things change like a sliding wind, a whipping wind that wasn't there before, you might want to consult them and say, hey, how much does this take off your thing? That's not the case here. It was thumbs up, thumbs down. They can be far more buttoned down than they are, a lot of them. You rarely see a Belichick or an Andy Reid make a mistake in those spots. Or some other guys. I don't want to just say those two, but it's rare. Why should the Giants feel good about Dable after seeing what happened to Judge and McAdoo in year 2? It feels like a total repeat. Yeah, but they didn't have his year 1. And Dable carries himself like a head coach. Do I like what I've seen this year? No. I think he's done some really risky things, and I think he's done some really dumb things. Like trying to force feed guys into the tackle position who can't play it. You know what? That doesn't work. I understand that he has a need there, and guys are going down, and all that's happening, but there have been things this year that you don't like from Dable because, you know what, he's been under constant crisis in every way since the season started. Bad play, injuries, everything has snowballed. And it's hard when that happens. Is he worth keeping? Absolutely. Would I give him a year 3? It's not even a question mark. He'll be back as the head coach. That's not even a question mark. And he should be. And I think they will win some games this year they shouldn't win. Now, they're not going anywhere this year, but I think they will win some games this year they shouldn't win. Or pull off I think they're good for a game or 2 surprise this year. They almost had one the other night. How much influence, Len asked, do the Tisches have on the football operations? Well, the way it's always been divided is the Tisches are the voice of the business end and the Maras are the football operations. But there's no big decision that the Tisches don't weigh in on, and the Tisches can have as much voice as they want to have, just like the Maras can have as much voice as they want to have. One side does not shut the other out on their area of expertise. But on the day-to-day football stuff, it's very strong Mara. And on the business, it's very strong Tish. That's the way it's always been handled. We'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.